Hello, and thanks for joining us for another episode of the WCK podcast. Today, we're going to continue our Interview with the DM series, where we interview some of our community's dungeon masters. I have the absolute pleasure of interviewing the reason for the server today. I've watched this person grow from a new and insecure DM to someone who's created his own world and commands it with some great authority. Lee, I am really excited to be talking with you today. In our very first episode of the podcast, we discussed how the server got created, and it all revolved around creating a safe space for you as a DM, as well as your players. So let's start at the beginning. How long have you been playing D&D?
Not massively long, maybe 3 or 4 years now. So yeah, it's something I've always been interested in, but just never had the opportunity to get friends around the table to play it. So yeah, but when I started, I just jumped headfirst in, right into the deep end.
Sounds about right for you.
Yeah.
How long? I assume that you started out as a player then.
Yeah, I did.
Maybe already know, but
Yeah,
started out as
as
a player before you ran your first game. So how long had you been playing for before you ran your first game?
Yeah, shockingly, it wasn't long. Maybe a couple of months, and then I just thought, you know what, I'd like to give it a go, and then just got some people together. And
Was there anything in particular that made you feel like you wanted to step into the role as DM?
I just thought the idea of creating my own story and giving the players opportunities to do something with that, it would be interesting to see how they approach some of the stuff that I would put forward to them. But like a naive DM, I went and ran a basic module straight from the book, and yeah, that never really comes across well because you can't bank on what your players are going to do anytime.
Right.
So it was Storm King's Thunder, which is an interesting one, but they managed to break off from the main plot line pretty soon, and then it was all just made up from there. So.
All right, so it started out as a pre-written module that you wound up having to kind of go off script and then homebrew through the rest of it?
Yeah, pretty much.
Nice.
Yeah.
What was the biggest hurdle that you have had to overcome as a DM?
Ooh, my confidence. That is the one thing, and you'll hear me continuously say this throughout every time I'm on here. It's my confidence. When I try or do anything, I have little to no confidence in what I'm doing. But then once I get comfortable, yeah, I feel better about it. I still get nervous. Even, like, I've been running games for ages, and after every game, before the game, I get absolutely nervous before it because I'm terrified. But 10 minutes into it, you wouldn't even know that I was terrified.
your sweats disappear?
Yeah, magically they go.
All right, so I believe, I'm going to sound fairly confident in saying that I believe your first shot was Circus of the Phantom Moon, if I remember correctly.
Yeah,
is that right?
My first one shot, yeah.
And that was entirely of your own creation, start to finish, homebrew?
Yep, all of it was made up by me. I got the idea from watching a couple of videos on YouTube. I mean, I think that's where every DM goes. They get their inspiration from what they see or listen, read, or anything like that. But yeah, I seen something about like a circus thing, and I thought, oh, that'd be cool. But rather than it be based inside the circus, take them somewhere else.
Yeah. Just use that as a jumping off point and then whisking them away into something more fantastical. So overall, right, from creating the idea and then running it, how was that experience for you? It's a loaded question, I know.
Yeah.
So, but just in general, how was the experience?
I enjoyed it. I really did. It's different because I've ran it a few times now, and they seem to all do similar things, but the end result usually changes a little bit. So that the boss fight tends to be the one that changes quite often how they approach that, and a couple of bits before that, but they more or less stick on like the same sort of route and have some same interactions,
Yeah.
which is interesting because you'd think that given a lot of different groups they would go totally different ways, but
Yeah. I mean, maybe it's just the set of circumstances. It's been so long since I played that one shot at this point that I'm struggling to remember all of the specifics, but it's interesting because the couple of one shots that I've run, the ones that I've run multiple times, generally do the same kind of thing where it has a completely different outcome. People go a completely different way than I would have ever expected. You know, you have your first group and you expect something, and they do, as players do, go somewhere else. And then you run it again and you kind of say, okay, well, forget what I was expecting the first time that the first group didn't do. Maybe this group will follow along with what the first group did, and they take a completely separate direction from that group, too. So let's be real for a second. In your first one shot, which again, if anybody is interested in the bigger story, you can go ahead and check out episode number 1 of this podcast. But there was some unexpected company that joined you in the middle of the game, which kind of, as somebody who was not super confident, put you a little bit on edge, and it affected you. But there was something that obviously made you want to do it again, which is why we are here and continuing on today. Was there something specific about that? How did you, maybe the better question is how did you overcome the additional anxiety that that unexpected visitor put on you to be able to continue to want to run games?
So I guess at the time I just pushed through it thinking all these people have turned up, I can't just go fall to pieces now. They're here to have some enjoyment, I'm going to give it to them. And then I asked for feedback off the players afterwards, and to my surprise, it was mostly positive feedback.
Yeah.
So that was a big boost, and I thought I absolutely loved seeing their faces go through it all and everything. And I thought this is something I want to do more. It's something I'm capable of doing. So why not continue to do this and give people some entertainment?
Yeah. I mean, and I'm thrilled that you continued, and I know that I'm not alone in that sentiment. So many people have enjoyed one shots of your devious mind since the creation of the server, for sure. So, as I said, the creation of your devious mind. Do you enjoy being a DM, or do you just do it because it's more opportunities to play and it's a means to an end?
I definitely enjoy DMing. As much as it is like stress and everything, I feel the
Yeah.
reward of being a DM definitely is. It feels better than being a player, because you see the faces of your players when they stumble upon something or something doesn't go their way and they're like shocked about it, or
Hmm.
they overcome some real odds that are stacked against them. It's really nice to see that. So I that's what I like more. I think that's where I get my enjoyment. I get my enjoyment from seeing other people enjoying themselves.
I love that. And it's really, I love the fun things that you do, so for people who don't know, who aren't involved in any of your campaigns at this point, you have a homebrew world, but you have multiple groups in the same world in different locations. And the things that the separate groups are doing are affecting what happens with the other group, unbeknownst to them, unless you happen to be in both parties. But it's a really kind of cool thing that you've done to um, incorporate that. And Jason, when we interviewed him, was even talking about how he runs one shots, and then those will affect what happens in his main campaign. And even another DM in our community, Katie, does that. And you have the pleasure of reaping the rewards of whatever that crazy adventuring party did in the one shot, because you're part of that party. But I think that's a really cool thing to do. So, um, between the campaigns that you have and the one shots that you run sporadically, you also started up a pick and play adventure where you have a series of one shots that people can kind of float in and out of. It was on hiatus for a little bit, but just so many listeners who have no idea what it is, can you give us a brief overview of the pick and play system and how that
Yeah.
works?
So effectively, it is just a drop in, drop out campaign where you can just create a character, pick up one of the adventures that's advertised, and then off you go with a group of people. It doesn't really have a set date. It's just as and when. So they'll go up, and I'll say these are the ones that are on offer. Pick something, and then we'll go and do it on a day. And
Hmm.
yeah, there is a story to it. It just because there's so many players in it, it takes a while to
Hmm.
sort of get to that story. But yeah, and it's also doesn't tie you to well, I've got to go every week to this game,
Right.
so it's a bit more flexible for people. And if you're also not enjoying a character, you can easily just swap out your character and start a new one. Um, your level, you could be joining a party with people who are different levels, but hey, that's half the fun. So
Yeah. It's it's a really interesting system. I like it a lot, and I feel like it's so much bigger, and I don't know, maybe my brain just can't process how to run something like that. It feels a little bit like that that gif of Charlie Day with his wall and his red string tying everything together, where you have this overall, story, but versus a campaign where you have maybe like 3 to 5, 6-ish players going through that. And even if you potentially double that into 2 different groups in your world, you're talking potentially however many, like dozens and dozens of players in this one world kind of going around and keeping track of it. And I know the way it's set up is you go into this tavern and you have a posting board where you have different adventures that you can choose to participate in or not, and then you're sent off from there. So they're all kind of connected through this one place that you portal in and out of. But it's still pretty cool to see the way that you link everything together in this big web of a world that's even completely separate than the world that your campaigns are set up in.
yeah,
How do you have so much space in your brain for all of this?
notes, lots and lots of notes. I just keep it all down on Roll20, and then I have notepads that are full, and sometimes I get them mixed up. But that's
And sometimes you can't read your own writing.
yeah.
Hmm.
When you like me and your writing's terrible, but yeah, it's hard to keep track of. But I think if you try and keep it in some like organized chaos, that's the that's the best way to do it for me.
Yeah.
I sort of know where it is if I need to find it, reading it or trying to understand it afterwards. Though it might be a bit difficult because my
Hmm.
handwriting is terrible.
um, all right, so we'll move into the next section, which kind of goes in line with taking notes and preparation. So, like we discussed, you have multiple groups in the same world. So a couple of different questions, I guess. One is what is the most difficult part of running two separate games in the same world with separate parties?
uh, the hardest one for that is definitely trying to keep what the players know different, and it's remembering which characters because there's a couple of players that play in both of them.
Uh-huh.
So it's trying to remember, does their character know this, and has that happened to them? Sometimes I get confused, but the players are quite forgiving with me on that.
Yeah.
Yeah, I think that's one of the harder things to do. Um, I have I have subfolders for each character with their backstory, um, stuff on there that I think might be interesting to drop in for their like character arcs or some important event that would happen to them at one point, that I can pull from, and anything their character does, I put on there as well, so, to try and get a read on whether their character would be more. If they're presented with a situation and their character normally would be like, "Oh, I wouldn't steal this from that person because they've never done it before, I will pull them up and say, well, you've never done this before in the entire game.
Mm-hmm.
Why is your character doing this now? Because if you keep like a little record of that, it's easier for you to get a read on their character and judge what they're going to do. So, which also makes prepping easier.
Yep. Which segues perfectly into, the question of prep, which is the question that everybody would expect me to ask, right? Everybody preps for sessions differently. You've kind of gone through a couple of different things that you do in the background. I know that I have some personal knowledge because before I was in some of these campaigns, I would be the person that you would bounce things off of. But can you, I guess, walk us through just prep for your sessions, and how has it started, or how has it changed from when you started up until now?
When I started, I was very much let's get the books out and roll dice, and we'll just go off the tables for everything. So I would pre-roll all the encounters and everything, get them up, and do them that way. And then I thought, because when you're rolling, you only get a certain amount of monsters and stuff off the charts and stuff. I thought it's quite bland. You're going to end up with a lot of the same things cropping up. So now I don't use any charts like that. I just, whatever I feel is right or would be cool, would fit
whatever
the
I
situation.
feel inspired to torture you with.
Yeah, something like that. But yeah, my prep is, because I'm an over prepper. I like to worry about every scenario that the party could go through and try and accommodate for it. When you've got a chaotic party, it's even more stressful. But yeah, so I will pretty much over prep. Usually it starts with, I'll throw some music on, get that low on in the background, and then just go look at the situation where they're in and go, where can they go from here, and what are the events that have happened around the surrounding areas that I know that they could potentially go to. And then I'll go with, because I know my players going back to my list, what's the most likely one they're going to go to.
Yep.
And even then they can surprise you and go the total opposite way.
Oops. I will say, though, as somebody who has played with you as a player, you being a DM for quite a while at this point, in a lot of your pick and plays, a lot of your one shots, a lot of your campaigns, if we throw you off, it's not very noticeable. And I generally am pretty good at picking up on cues. And I know you very well at this point, and I'm definitely good at picking up on cues for when you get flustered. But I think that you do a really great job, and maybe that's having a stack of maps at the ready. So no matter what, you just throw on a random map and here you are now, and you kind of recover and save from that. But I think that even if you feel like, and maybe it's part of the over prep that you do, you always have something waiting in the wings, but if whatever it is, you appear to be pretty unshakable in terms of, sometimes we do try hard to to say, all right, what kind of crazy thing can we do here? And but there's very rarely a time where you have to pause and go, well, crap, I have to think of something now. Or if you do, you just do that silently in the background and none the wiser for the rest of us. So good job to you. As a DM, you've come across a bunch of different kind of players: chaotic, lawful, sometimes a little evil. What kind of player makes games enjoyable for you? Is there anything that you look for? Is there anything that you try and maybe avoid or rein in? What makes your experience as a DM enjoyable from a player standpoint?
I prefer characters that aren't bland. Just something unique about them. It doesn't have to be, like a really in-depth backstory about how you were given some magical item that was passed down through generations because it was like bathed in the moonlight of the seventh moon or something like that. Nothing like that. It just has to be something simple and just to stand out. So why did you become a hero? What separates you from the average Joe farmer that's just working away in the field. It's just something like that. So it gives me something to work on, and then I can pull you out of, because you're going to get the shy players who struggle with role play at times. But then if I've got something like that to work on, I can go, well, here are some characters that we can gently ease you into role playing and pull you out. And yeah, I think that's them's the type of players I like, that bring something different, and well, it doesn't even have to be unique, just different to the table, rather than your average character.
I think that's a pretty fair answer. Now, I have a question that I'm actually very excited to ask. Would you, or could you, obviously theoretical would you run a game with players that play the game like you do? So, you DM Lee on the opposite side of the screen from 4 Lees, for example.
Oh, 4 of me's.
4 of you.
4 warlocks, that'd be interesting.
But you could have a celestial warlock,
Yeah,
and you
could
have a pact of the tome.
Be an interesting group. Yeah, I think I could handle that for players like me. Roleplay might be interesting to see, because if you've got 4 that are the same as me, it'd be different. So yeah, I think I could handle 4 of me. I don't know if the world could, but yeah.
The world's not ready for that kind of magnificence, sir. But I'm not gonna even sit here and listen to you even insinuate that your role play is problematic, because I mean, you as a DM versus 4 Lees 2 years ago looks very different than you as a DM and 4 Lees right now. I think that it would be a whole different scenario, and I think you'd have just the most fantastic time having a party of all warlocks. So to date, what has been your favorite moment in any of the games that you've run?
Oh, that is a really tough one. From what the party have done, or just from what I have done as a DM?
Let's answer both of those.
Oh, I think probably my favorite moment that the group have done would have been how they dealt with the death of one of the characters. It was only momentarily. They didn't know that this character was going to be brought back to life, but it was interesting to see how they reacted to that character dying. And yeah, it was quite touching. As a DM, my favorite whole thing would probably be the end of my first homebrew campaign that I run for randoms. It got very emotional. I don't know whether it was because it was the end of a long run, combined with the ending of that campaign, but there was a lot of tears shed, and it was really nice to see it play out, and it was good. I enjoyed it.
So let's talk for a second. I'm going to make you expand upon it, because it's actually one of the questions I had was directly about character death. My question was, have you ever killed one of your players? And albeit temporarily or permanently, talk to me about character death as a DM, how that affects you, how you watch that affect your party.
So it can be unavoidable at times. That it's just players will make decisions that could end their characters in a world of hurt and death. I don't enjoy players dying, but that's just the world. That's how it goes. If you've got no means to bring them back, I'm sorry, but that's just it. Unless there is something else written in the stars for them. But yeah, it hurts me when I see a character die, because I know how it feels. You put your life and soul into a character, and then to have it like fall short, the story end not where you were expecting it to end, it can feel really bad.
Yeah.
I've had a few characters die. A couple of them I didn't feel bad for, because this player just insisted on trying to defy the odds completely. I gave them multiple opportunities to not die, but if
They
you're gonna
just really wanted to go and meet their maker.
if you're gonna square off at like a frost giant at low level, it's just not gonna happen. I can't.
Right.
There's only so much I can do as a DM to deter that.
So the moment that you referenced before, about that one character death in a story that you were a DM, um, and you were touched by how people went around that. Talk to me about that for a second, because I think it's interesting from a DM standpoint, from a player standpoint, to hear what the DM says about that. So who is the character? What were the situations around it, and what?
Well, I think the whole group thought that there was a total party kill. Everybody were dead. Then some of them got brought back to life.
Do I know what you're talking about?
You should know.
Okay.
Yeah. So some of them
It took me a second for all the pieces to click. I'm here now.
Yeah. So some of them got brought back to life, but one of them was just lay on the floor, still dead. And yeah, I think that was just uncomfortable for the party, because they had the level they were at. They had no means on bringing them back, as well as they were already in a situation that could end up the rest of them dying again.
Right.
So it's that moment. What do they do? How do they bring her back or anything like this? And then all of a sudden, monsters started attacking them, and yeah, it was very. It was just nice to see that they were trying to come up. They weren't just like, she's dead, because this character is very. I don't know. How would you describe Miranda with the rest of the group? Brash.
Miranda is misunderstood. Miranda loves a lot, but the list of people that she loves is very short. But the list the list of things that she will do for those people on that list doesn't end. You know, so for anybody who does not know, I play a character, Miranda, in one of his campaigns, and I am the sister of another one of the characters, Zach. And Miranda came in, she did not start with the party, and she could not give less of a shit about most of the party. But her brother, she would literally do anything for. If you're in this campaign with me, please stop listening for the next 15 seconds. Okay, they're gone. She would literally murder all of the rest of them. And not feel bad about it if that's what her brother wanted. She's a complicated character, and actually, yeah, it was really interesting to me, as the person running that character, because she's not super likable, and she was new to the party, and the way people who did not owe her anything kind of stopped to try and help and bring her back was definitely touching, and something that I wasn't expecting as a person.
Yeah. I think it surprised me.
Yeah.
And then happy ending, she came back.
Everybody is so much happier that she didn't die. So that was a temporary death. How do you deal with death once the player knows it? Once we know it's permanent, do you give them last words, show them a vision of their heaven or wherever it is that they're going to in their afterlife?
Yeah, I think regardless of the situation, there should always be that opportunity for closure, for the players, because it's yeah, in life you're not going to always get that, but this is something you can control, and I think it's only fair to be able to do that. So I will try my best to give them like at least a couple of minutes, depending on how they went, just to be able to say anything that was on their mind or anything, and then yeah, they'll get a chance to decide what their little slice of heaven looks like if they've been well.
I love that. And I so appreciate it, because as a fellow player who's experienced 2 of your players' very permanent deaths, it's affected me as a person. It affected my characters, both of them, very, very much. And it's very emotional, and I know the first character death of yours that I experienced, was so terrible. Like, it was, "You're here, this happened, and now there's nothing." And there was no more. You didn't get that ending to it. It was just, you're dead, and that go create a new character. I'm really happy that I think we together have kind of created for my character in that campaign and your character in that campaign, we've kind of gone and been able to give those two some closure, or at least us as people closure about those characters, in continuing on bloodlines and naming children after fallen players, and it's been really healing for me, and I think I'll jump out on a limb and say for you too.
The same for me there. It's definitely helped and give me some closure for that. So I feel like their chapter sort of ended, and
Yep.
I got some satisfaction from that.
Yeah. So character relationships in a campaign can be complicated. They can be really fun and dynamic to play with. I know, obviously, I just talked about Miranda and Zach, but there have been a couple of player uh, relationships or character relationships within your stories. Do you have a particular favorite dynamic or a particular set of characters that you think just really kind of played well together and interacted and brought life to a story with an established relationship instead of just a group of randos that, came together and decided to adventure? You have some relationships built in there.
Yeah, I think having a solid relationship already established in a group, whether it's just a couple of them, it does change the whole game completely. I'd prefer it if we could get that more often, but
Mhm.
I know it's tough to try and, because when you develop these relationships, you actually have to put thought and feeling into it.
Mm.
And I know some people find that uncomfortable and don't want to do that, which is fair enough.
Yep.
Um, but yeah, I think the strongest relationship I've seen in one of the games so far, I'm gonna just keep going on about them. But I think, yeah, Zach and Miranda have probably got the strongest relationship.
Mm.
I know the interesting one is Friedrich and Kane, who
Mhm.
sort of will they, won't they
Yep,
stay
yep.
together? It's always that.
Let me
Where,
pick up this week's edition of the tabloids
yeah,
to see how they are.
is the Hot King still with his cursed lover? Who
His
knows?
cursed
Yeah.
lover.
But yeah, that is
That is the
another.
tagline.
Yeah, that is another one. They met by chance and then ended up as on and off lovers.
Mhm.
And it's will they, won't they make it? Who knows?
Yeah, they are a very interesting couple, and it's fun to kind of watch, right? And I think the thing about having a relationship in a campaign is it changes the stakes big time,
Yeah, when
you
you've got
know?
somebody that you're invested in,
Mhm.
and you go, I'm gonna look after these no matter what.
Yep.
Your character might do something that puts himself in real danger that they normally wouldn't do.
Yep.
So yeah, it
Completely agree.
does change it a lot.
So, what do you think? We're getting close to the end, so you can breathe a little easier. What do you think your proudest moment as a DM, or what are you, Lee, proudest of in terms of you, Lee, the game master?
uh, I think proudest moment for me is how I've come along with giving a go at trying different voices and all that.
Mm-hmm.
Because there was a time I would just do maybe three, and they would be my normal voice, a higher pitched one, and a lower pitched one. Now I'm, because I'm comfortable around my players, I'm more open and willing to give things a go. So
Mm-hmm.
I think that's, seeing from where I started and where I've landed. That's been the most proudest thing that I am of myself.
Which voice is your favorite voice?
There's not a chance of doing it, but yeah, it'd probably be
I
Francois.
Francois makes me the happiest. And I think that you should treat us all to it, but if you don't want to, I'm not going to force you to.
That might be another episode on it.
Another episode.
Yeah.
Well,
Francois
I will
comes
just
in.
let everyone know that Francois exists within the pick and play world. So if you, and you should be very interested in meeting Francois, he's a wonder with fabric. He will make you the dreamiest of clothes, and has a very interesting relationship of his own built into the world. So yeah, I love Francois. I'm very, very thrilled with. Anyway, I could talk for a long time about Francois. I think in closing, do you have any advice for DMs just starting out, or people who are nervous, very much so like you were, to step behind the screen?
Give it a go. Don't be afraid to make mistakes. It will help if you've got friends or family or people that it would be friends that you're comfortable with playing with. Because if you do make mistakes, they're not going to be bothered. They're just going to be there, happy to be playing a game with you. And if you do make a mistake, don't get too hung up on it. Even now, I still do mistakes, so it's just all the learning experience.
Right. It doesn't matter how long you've been playing for. I often will tell people, we didn't start watching Critical Role until this most current campaign, which is campaign 3. And there are times where I see Matt Mercer stop and look something up, because you're not expected to know everything. And everybody feels like you have to know everything and always have the answer all the time. And sometimes you can make an on-the-spot ruling and look it up later, or sometimes you have a couple of seconds to look it up, or sometimes, especially if you're playing online, right? Maybe one of your players is typing into the Google machine in the background and they can help out and answer you. I really think that that's a huge takeaway, is that you don't have to know everything. It is a learning process. And if you're playing with the right people, it's a learning process together, right? Well, I will not torture you anymore. I know how you felt about doing this anyway, but I really appreciate you sitting down with me and walking all of us through your story as a dungeon master. I think that other people will find it inspiring and will look to you. I know that you've personally held my hand every step of the way as I fumble my way through learning the ropes of running games and trying to figure out Roll20 and maps, and I can't thank you enough. As your friend who's watched you through a majority of your journey, I am so proud of the DM and player and person you've blossomed into. Watching you overcome so much while you push yourself to give as much as you can to your players has been really just amazing to watch. So thank you for all you do, all the effort you put in, and on behalf of every single one of us who's ever had the pleasure of playing with you, thank you. I'm really honored to kind of experience this journey with you. To all of our listeners, keep your eyes out for any opportunities you have to journey to the Rabid Guinea Pig Tavern. That is the place in the Pick and Play events. And peruse the job posting board for your chance to join a Pick and Play adventure with Lee. From all of us at WCK, thank you so much for making it through another episode of the podcast. Until next time, stay cool. But if you can't be cool, be wicked. See ya. Thank you.
Bye!
Thank you to Kev G. Moore for providing the music for this series. Check out his links for YouTube, Spotify and Patreon in the links below. Wherever you found us today, don't forget to like and subscribe for more great content, and if you want to find out more about what we do, how to support us, pick up some merch and find links to our friends like JB Media, visit us at wickedcoolkids.co.uk.